Namaskar, hello, and welcome, friends, to the Joy, Clarity, and Success podcast. My name is Shushmit Aditya Mukherjee. I'm an educational content creator. This video is an excerpt from the almost 2 hour long podcast that we had with Mr. Nilesh Oak. This podcast is aimed at revealing to you newer possibilities and deeper understandings of Indian Itihasa, Indian mythology, and Indian epics. Let's get started.
Okay. So, thank you, sir. And one more very interesting number that I heard from you, 7,500 years. So, I think this is the source of one of the major conflicts or controversies or questions that you have to face. That how come you say 7,500 years? Where do you get these numbers? So, my question to you is, what is the age of the Mahabharatas? When was Krishna there? When was Rama there? And what is the age of the Vedas, the Rig Vedas, and the other 4 Vedas?
Okay, so if I have to give the answer for all 3 questions in a very broad way, in a very easy way for people to remember, I say it like this, so I will repeat that. I say for an easy way to remember for people, based on a phenomenal, scientific, empirical, logical, multidisciplinary evidence, no ifs, no buts. The Mahabharata happened more than 7,000 years ago. I'll give you the exact year, 7,585 years ago, 5561 BCE. But for simple remembering, people forget these numbers. When I say 5561 BCE, they confuse that with 5,000 years ago. Instead of 5,561 plus 2024, 25, whatever it is. So therefore, it's easy way to remember. Definitely, it happened more than 7,000 years ago. That's Mahabharata. More than 14,000 years ago, so that's a multiplication of 7,000, you can say, is Ramayana. The specific year can be also given because these both are Itihasa text. So Ramayana, like Ram Ravana Yuddha, the year is 12,209 BCE, just like Mahabharata Yuddha is a 5561 BCE. Now, when it comes to Rigveda is not the Rigveda that we have today, like a Shakala Samhita, like 10 mandalas. All that thing is not composed at a one time. In fact, we can tell when was possibly the latest things that were composed that are part of Rigveda, and I would say they are contemporary to Mahabharata times, because Vyasadeva, there is a description in Mahabharata that Vyasadeva recasted, re-edited the Vedas. So we can take that as and there is evidence to that. For example, Saraswati turning from a grand river, Saraswati as a grand river, to Sindhu as a grand river. That transition is been captured actually in the Rigveda itself. Again, that will be a long answer, so I won't go there. But Rigveda, if you go to mandala like a 6, 3, 7, and even sometime 4 and 2, you see the grand Saraswati. But by the time you come to mandala 10 and the Nadi Sukta 10.75, you see that the baton has been passed. The baton for the being a grand river, that was been held by Saraswati, as if it has been passed on to river Sindhu. That you can see right in the Nadi Sukta. So therefore,
I'm referring to the drying up of Saraswati or something like that.
There is no drying up of Saraswati mentioned there. But what happens is, for example, there are these grand descriptions of Saraswati, like Naditame, Ambitame, Devitame, Saraswati, Giribhya A Samudra, or that grand river, hey, you are the biggest of the biggest river. That is Naditame, Ambitame, Devitame, Saraswati. Those descriptions are there in the Rigveda text. That same Rigveda text now has this 10th mandala, Nadi Sukta, where river Saraswati is also mentioned, and it's not mentioned like it is a dry or anything. It is actually flowing. Image Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati in that sequence, starting from like eastern India all the way to Afghanistan. 19 rivers are mentioned. But in that same sukta, there is a description of now Sindhu as the grand river. And now it doesn't tell why now Sindhu is a grand river. But for that now we have to go to the modern science of geology, geophysics, geochemistry, morphodynamics of rivers, or hydrology. And it tells you the whole history of a river Saraswati going back to 200,000 plus years. And how the changes have happened, how Yamuna separated from Saraswati, how Satluj separated from Saraswati. And now because Satluj separated from Saraswati, and it started meeting Sindhu, and Satluj is one of the grand river, Therefore, now Sindhu became the grandest, and Yamuna also came to Ganga. So that's how we are saying it. But to complete that answer, so Mahabharata more than 7,000 years ago, Ramayana more than 14,000 years ago, and just to keep up with this multiplication of 7,000, I say Rigveda is definitely older than 21,000 years ago. Okay, but that's not to say, because people are so lazy, so naive. Like immediately they will say, oh, Nilesh says Rigveda was composed 21,000 years ago. And I say, what nonsense? I mean, you can't listen, or what is the problem? I am saying Rigveda is definitely older than 21,000 years ago. Now, is it 75,000 years ago, 220,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago? I don't know.
So what are the proofs that you have accumulated in terms of this, sir? Because I have seen you give genealogical proofs and other event-wise proofs in some other shows also that you have given them. Could you just refer to them for our audience's reference?
Okay, so what I will say is the evidence is so much that I would rather ask you to pick up a field of science. And so it doesn't look like I'm using evidence of my choice. Depending on the type of science, discipline of science you pick up, and depending on the type of evidence that is available, it will tell us certain information. Some evidence is better than others, that's there. So you pick one. I mean, some science that comes to you, and it doesn't have to be science. You can say genealogy, and that's fine, But you pick something, and I will tell you what evidence exists.
Yes, so I'll just refer two things: genealogy and astrophysics. Give me one evidence for each of them. Like for Ramayana,
genealogy and astrophysics, you said?
Yes, the position of the stars.
Okay. Right. So let's start with astrophysics, and it's not astrophysics at all. In fact, as much as people think astrophysics is very exciting, I'll tell you it's extremely boring. Okay. I have worked with astrophysics as a hobby for a very long time, and even I have many, like I would say upwards of 20 plus folks who have done their PhD. They are in academia in astrophysics. In fact, sometimes people say, come to me, and young guys and girls both, and they say, oh, I want to do PhD in astrophysics. It just happened recently. I was in Tamil Nadu, and I met one very young, beautiful, very intelligent, charming girl, and she wanted to do PhD in astrophysics. And I said, that's great, but think again. And I had some conversation, but anyways, I'll not go into that. So the evidence that we are referring to when dating, say, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Rigveda, we can simply call it astronomy. Visual astronomy, we can say. Astrophysics is as I said, boring and bit complicated and subject. So we'll not go there. But I understand you said astronomy in a generic sense. In fact, astronomy is the only scientific discipline, at least as it relates to our ancient text. And if we are lucky, and if the astronomy evidence is embedded in our text, then I would say astronomy is the only discipline of science that is capable of giving a very accurate and precise answer. Let's say precise, whether we don't know accurate, I'm using in a statistical sense, but accurate in the sense of correct or wrong. You can get a wrong answer in astronomy. That's not a problem. If you point your telescope in a wrong direction, you can precisely see the star there, but it is not the star you want to see. In the same sense, you can get a wrong answer if your knowledge of astronomy is wrong, or if you make mistake in interpreting the Sanskrit words, and so many things, or there can be errors in your calculations. But just let's start with astronomy. Fortunately, Mahabharata has close to 300 astronomy descriptions. Ramayana has close to 600 astronomy descriptions. And then for our audience, to make it not too complicated, imagine now bringing this all evidence together in a scientific fashion, in a logical fashion, as if like solving, as a metaphorically speaking, solving a jigsaw puzzle, solving a crossword puzzle. If you bring all the 300 references together from the Mahabharata, it points to only one date, 5561 BCE, and no other. If you look at close to 600 astronomy descriptions from Valmiki Ramayana, and again remember, Valmiki Ramayana is what one must stick to if we are looking at a history, itihas. Those 600 descriptions come together beautifully, like solving a piece of, a jigsaw puzzle or a crossword puzzle. And it points to a one specific year, 12,209 BCE as the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha, and no other. And now both of these texts refer to Rigveda. I mean, not just Rigveda, all four Vedas are referred to into Ramayana, also in Mahabharata, which means they must be before that. In some form, they are before that. And so now, if you, I don't know if you recently watched podcast of my co-researcher and a good friend Rupa Bhattiji at Ranveer Alabadia's, the TRS, the Ranveer show. And so we are working together for many years, and we are working independently and together. So she is talking of certain reference, astronomy reference in Rigveda that takes her back to 220,000 years. Okay, I will not go into that for a reason. Because in order to even understand that, one has to prepare a background from multiple different disciplines, and that is not possible. A podcast is not a right medium for that. So therefore I'm saying it's definitely more than 21,000. So that 21,000, more than 21,000 is based on a river evidence, like the Saraswati, Satluj, Yamuna, Ganga. And what is that evidence? This evidence is simple, that the grand river Saraswati that is mentioned in Rigveda multiple times is simply not there in the geological records in the last 20,000 years, if that helps. So therefore, just on that basis, the Rigveda has to be, some portions of Rigveda has to be more than 21,000 years, no ifs, no buts. Okay? Now, people struggle. Do you know why people struggle? Because with their own lack of intellect, or just putting their Shraddha into the wrong sources, in the last 300 years, they have been brainwashed, or they on their own choose to brainwash themselves with absolutely unscientific, illogical, idiotic information. That is what the academia, that is what the Wikipedia, that is what our social media is filled with. And it is their choice. I mean, if they want to be stupid, it is their choice, Even when the knowledge is available, and it's not like they have to listen to Nilesh Oak. Maybe they can take an inspiration or a doubt, by listening to me and you. But then they can go into any rich library, find any discipline of science, and start pulling the papers. The problem is they are lazy, I mean, I have 200 plus papers, and when I say that, people don't believe it. That is the kind of poor intellect people have. I have 200 papers, 200 plus, I'm saying. I stopped after that. The additional value of additional paper is not much. When you have a 200 papers blurting the same thing, that Saraswati is a very old river. The grand Saraswati of Rigveda is simply not there in the last 20,000 years. That's the evidence saying Rigveda is more than 20,000 years.
So, referring to your Saraswati basin logic only, sir, I have spoken to, in fact, I have done a podcast recently. We could not upload it because of certain reasons. We'll be re-uploading that. So, that person is also a gem of a person who is doing research in epics. He's from ISRO, and I think you have met with him. So, he is referring to the same proofs that I'll specify it. Two things. One is riverbed maps of Saraswati and chariots, like difference between chariots of horses and chariots of bullock carts or bullock chariots. So these differences they have referred to, and they are assigning the dates based on that, and that is very much different to what the numbers you are putting. So if you could give just one reference for the astronomical proofs, and also one specific reference for Saraswati basin, one specific reference, so that you could pinpoint, and you can say that There are 300 proofs like this.
Yeah. Okay. No. Great question. And you tell me if you. So you mentioned ISRO and some person with chariots and a bullock cart and chariots with horses and some.
Jijit Nadumuri, sir.
Say sorry.
Jijit Nadumuri, sir. If you remember.
Yeah. No. So now you said it. I was going to guess the name, and I would have said the same thing. And you have every reason. See, you have every reason to make a judgment on each individual. Each one of us has a reason to. I know Jijit Nadumuri beginning 2016, I would like to say 2016, 17 somewhere. We have met many times. We have presented in the same conferences. Again, I would say what I'm going to say next. You don't have to. You don't have to accept it. In fact, why would you? Shouldn't rather. You should do your own thing. And very rarely I say these things because it's great that people study from different perspective. People must study. There should be always this quest for a search. For example, Voltaire has a very good quote. He says, "Cherish those who are looking for the truth. Beware of those, or fear those who have found it."
Right.
Okay, in that sense, there should be always a quest for knowing more, or there should be always a recognition that one could be wrong. Meaning, for example, I presented 5561 BCE as the year of Mahabharata war, 12,209 BCE as year of Ram Ravana Yuddha. I am very convinced, okay, on a multidisciplinary evidence. I personally say no ifs, no buts. I am that confident. Even having said that, I am not stopping anyone from coming up with a better answer. Right now, I am saying this is the best answer by a long shot, which is to say no other answer comes anywhere close to it. But why just Jijit Nadumuri Ravi? I mean, I won't ask you, but I'm saying I'm curious. Like, why did you just might have happened to run into him? But why just Jijit Nadumuri Ravi? In fact, there are people who have done a lot better work, and they're not even from our times, with the extremely limited resources. I will give you some names, and I am afraid I don't want to even compare them with Jijit Nadumuri Ravi. I will tell you what I think of Jijit Nadumuri Ravi at the end, and then we can stop on this subject at least. So I know him well. I have had a meal together with him. Even there was an attempt to do a debate with him, in a Bengaluru. Attempt meaning, I'm saying attempt because again, it will be a digression. So I'll just mention it because I opened the subject. We came for a debate there. This was in 2020, date of Mahabharata. Before the debate, he came to it. So there was a correspondence, and he said he will claim and he will defend that Mahabharata war happened in the year 1793 BCE. This is a claim of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar, who worked in the government, worked in astronomy. He has a PhD in astronomy, worked with the Meteorology Institute, or forgive me, I may not be saying everything correct, for 18 years. Okay, and this has been said by Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar himself. And so he came up with, Ashok Bhatnagarji came up with 1793 BCE as the claim. I am saying, I'm asserting, not saying, it's not opinion, it's a disaster, and I will explain why when I give you the evidence for my side. But it's good that we should debate it. People should know how to make a choice between two choices. So Jijit Nadumuri Ravi was going to come and defend 1793 BCE, and it was very clear to him that I am going to assert why 5561 BCE is the year of Mahabharata war. When we actually came there, and so I had prepared all my slides showing why 1793 is not correct, what are the problems with 1793 assumption, and all of this. And this individual, namely Jijit Nadumuri Ravi, comes there and he drops off his claim of 1793 BCE and talks in a very fashion some range for the Mahabharata. Okay, some range, some plausible range, or I don't know what the word he used. Unfortunately, that video from Bangalore is not available. So he uses that. And I'm saying that's not what I'm fighting. I mean, I can still respond to that. And I will give you the response in my answers to that, by the way. But and then anytime I tried to ask him a question, he just went on a tangent. Fortunately, it was not in isolation. The whole auditorium was full and there were many witnesses. Some of those witnesses still exist. One of my good friend, Pradeep Atur, and I did not know him then. In fact, we became friends because of this. He's based in San Diego, California. Okay. And so he said, what kind of nonsense is this? I said, Pradeep ji, you are just seeing one. I face this kind of nonsense every day. So I do not want to even isolate and just specifically talk about Jijit Nadumuri Ravi. Okay. But there are many such individuals who, so just to summarize Jijit Nadumuri Ravi, his claim, and I will talk about my evidence. Whatever he is asserting, I call it blabbering, there is nothing science in it. There is empirical evidence, yes. So he will look at Sanauli evidence and will talk about it. He will talk about the chariot with the spokes wheel. Yeah, he talks about it. When he talks about the rivers, for example, some of the stuff he says is just factually correct. So I'm not saying that there is a problem with it. But as soon as he gets into the dating business, okay, I have to really find somebody who is more unscientific, more illogical, and more dramatic than Jijit Nadumuri Ravi. And I would request you not to edit this in your podcast. You don't have to take the blame. The blame is on me. Okay, I have said it and I will stand by these words. In fact, I want somebody to come, says, Nilesh, what kind of nonsense is this? You are calling this another researcher and unscientific and illogical. Why do you call that? And I said, please arrange a program and I will, how much time, you tell me how much time you have, and I will go one by one and explain what is unscientific, what is illogical, what is about it.
Why don't you explain something here?
Sorry?
Why don't you explain some of it here?
Yeah, we will of course do that. Of course, no, why not? That's a great opportunity. And I am not saying this out of any anger for him, if you think. For example, let me tell you the two great things about him. There are many. Now, why just two? In fact, the dogged determination, that with which he keeps on doing things. I like it. He is also very good with the database. I don't know if you discussed the Ancient Voice website that he has. I have not used it in a long time. I have never used it, but I should have used it. But he has put all the Mahabharata there, and let's say you just type Ashwatthama, then it will show everywhere there is Ashwatthama mentioned in the entire Mahabharata. Those verses will pop up. I have used that sometime, just to see how it works. I think that's a phenomenal thing that he has done. Okay, phenomenal. Then he is also a computer artist. Like he can draw on a computer. I don't know how. Maybe now the artificial intelligence is a competition to him, so he may have that challenge, like that does that. Now, is he a person with thick skin, which is also required in doing a research? I think he is. Which is to, in a good way I'm saying it, which is to say, in a way, somebody tells something that he's wrong, he has thick enough skin that he can just ignore it and continue with what he's saying. And that's good. Because, it's like his narration should continue. And frankly, I find it very advantageous, the narration like his and even many others. I never feel that this narration should be totally thrown out, those books should be banned or burned, or they should not be allowed a platform. I think they should be allowed more and more platforms. But I see this for a different reason, so that their idiocy, stupidity, illogic, unscientific stuff comes out and it becomes, masses become familiar with it. That's the reason. That's not to say that some of the stuff that they're saying is factually correct. It is. So I have no problem with that. But the dating, that's our question. So 1793 versus 5561 BCE, he just came there and basically destroyed my time. Wasted my time. Okay. So there is no anger, but there is a frustration about that. And you do not do that on a platform like this. So therefore, I have done few debates. In fact, Aditya, you will find the dating of Mahabharata, other than Nilesh Oak, I will challenge anyone to show me a debate where two other individuals with two different claims for the year of Mahabharata war have come together and debated which claim is correct. I would like to see that. But that doesn't happen because they know what a poor footing these guys are on. If those two individuals comes, any two individuals I'm saying, out of 130 different claims, and today out of those 130, at least 20 to 30 people are around, okay, with different claims. Why do they not come and fight against each other, like a 3136 BC versus 3067 BC versus 1793 BC versus 3126 BC versus 3162 BC? I'm just telling you all these names, versus 3009 BC, 3138 BC, 3143 BC. Okay,
Yes.
1400 BC, 1478 BC, Professor R.N. Iyengar. None of them will dare to come together against each other, because the end result, I can tell you, Aditya, it will be like Sunda Upasunda. They will fight and both of them will fall to the ground and expose to the world how unscientific, illogical and idiotic those claims are. And I say this with a great respect for these individuals. Okay, so I'm being very euphemistic when I'm using these words. I'm using these words very carefully. So now let's, after all this thing, let me talk about what evidence is there in support of 5561 BC, but how that same evidence falsifies all these claims. Okay, can we start with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So for example, let's begin the first one. What happens is, in a science, when we are looking for evidence, or when we are trying to do one experiment, or when we are trying to solve a problem, like, why do we do it? Well, we do it because that particular problem is not solved by a previous theory. That particular evidence is not explained by a previous or existing theory. So it's a problem, and therefore we are trying to solve the problem. Or maybe we have a doubt about somebody's assertion, so therefore we are repeating that experiment to see whether he or she is right or wrong. That is the reason we do research. That's why the word research is there. Sanshodhan. Shodhan is there, but Sanshodhan in a Vishesha way, in a very specific way. So for example, when you are looking, say, 300 astronomy observations, and out of 130 different dates for Mahabharata year, half of them claim that they use the astronomy evidence. So we have a very good case here. Now, what kind of evidence we should look for? For example, if it says the sun was in the nakshatra Ashwini, or sun was in the nakshatra Mula, that is something we can, it's worth verifying, but there is nothing great about it. Why? I mean, we should verify if it says so, but it is a corroboration, because sun being in the Mula nakshatra happens once every year. If we say the full moon is near nakshatra Kritika, well, that happens every year, at least once and maybe twice, something like this, because we have to explain how the year is. So we are not looking for the truth in the sense of a trivial truth, like, oh, there was a sunrise and those people ate their breakfast, then they went to the forest, then they ate lunch. We are not, I mean, that's a good information. We are not looking for that kind of thing. We are looking for interesting information. In science, what we call it a crucial evidence, crucial experiment. So I'll tell you that experience. So go back to 1994. I don't know if you were born then, but that's when my journey began. I was, in Edmonton, Canada. I had just completed my master's and waiting for certain permissions, the work permissions. And therefore, I had not submitted my thesis. I had a free time, almost nothing to do for about 15 days or so. I went to a library and just exploring the Indian section of the Canadian University Library, reading all the books, sort of shuffling through them. And then I came across the entire collection of the critical edition of Mahabharata. So I said, nice. Let me see where Bhagavad Gita is. So I pulled the Bhishma Nirvana and I started reading from the first chapter, waiting for the chapter on Bhagavad Gita, like, Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. I did not go that far. I ran into the second chapter, second adhyay and third adhyay, a long list of astronomy descriptions. Now they were fascinating by themselves, but there is one specific shlok that fascinated me beyond anything. So you know what it said? Ya chaisha visruta rajas trailokye sadhu sambata arundhati tayapesha vasishta prushtata kruta. Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta. And it was an astronomy description that was clear. Now, what's so big deal about it? Well, there were many other astronomy descriptions, but the big deal about this, with the knowledge of astronomy that I had right from the 6th grade, when my teacher started teaching me astronomy, I said, what? Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishta? Impossible. What nonsense. Okay, who is saying this? Vyasa is saying this. Vyasa is saying to Dhritarashtra, Arundhati taya pesha Vasishta prushtata kruta. Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishta? I mean, from my 6th grade, I'm seeing every day in the night that Vasishta is walking ahead, And so I said, this is very fascinating. And I thought, oh, that's so great. I mean, if I can find out if Arundhati could be seen walking ahead of Vasishta and exactly when it was walking ahead of Vasishta, bingo, we know the timing of Mahabharata. So I went to actually one Professor Murdeshwar. He was a professor of mathematics, but very interested in astronomy, music, many subjects. So I went to him and he said, Kaka, in Marathi, Chacha, Kaka, I said, have you heard about this, Arundhati? He was almost ready to retire at that time. He's a short individual. His eyesight was also a bit weakened because of diabetes and whatnot. He's no more, unfortunately. It was in his house. Actually, I went to his house. He got up from his place, went to his bookshelf and pulled one book. This was a book named Swayambhu by Dr. P.V. Vartak, a medical doctor. He said, please go through this book. I think what you are just saying, what you are asking is mentioned in that book. I'll make a long story short. Actually, Dr. Vartak had referred to that shlok, has tried to make sense of that shlok. Remember, Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, Adhyatmik, whatever, So the book is Swayambhu by Dr. P.V. Vartak, Padmakar Vishnu Vartak, and it is in Marathi. Now it has been translated as a Su Generis, however you say the French word, like a Swayambhu, Sugneris, Su Generis or something like that, meaning Swayambhu kind of thing, self-established, whatever you want to call it. By Dr. P.V. Padmakar Vishnu Vartak. He was a medical doctor based in Pune. He passed away around 2018-19 or so. And an inspiration for me, inspiration for me. But I did not know him then. I'm telling you, 1994. In fact, that's how I became aware of his name and research. Okay. So he has tried in three different ways. He has failed and he has noted it down in his book at least 2-3 times. He says, I encourage all the astronomers to study this Arundhati Vasishta observation and assist us in the knowledge of Mahabharata, in deciding the dating of Mahabharata. So that's what he has done. All right. So long story short, there. So then, so it was a sort of a boost for me also, that I am not the only one who is thinking this is a problem. Interestingly, I should mention, like including our dear friend Jijit Nadumuri Ravi that you mentioned, or anyone else. They were rather, I should say, unaware of this problem. Okay, unaware of this problem. Now, the funny thing is, when finally I solved it, because I met Jijit only, and I'm not only talking of Jijit, this is a problem with every single living Mahabharata dating researchers. Okay, it has basically scared the hell out of them, this Arundhati Vasishta observation that I'm telling you. Okay, so what this has done. So long story short now, so this is 1994 and I'll tell you, I don't know if you can see me on the screen. So imagine this is Arundhati, this is Vasishta. So this up is a north, imagine that as a north. So Arundhati is to the north of Vasishta and Vasishta, and also the Arundhati is to the east of Vasishta. If from your point of view, you can see this as a east, this as a west, and a map, and this as a north. So what happens is their position is kind of like this, and right now the way they go like this. Vasishta is ahead, Arundhati is behind. Like my hand with this whatever thread I am wearing, that is Vasishta, and this is Arundhati. So they are going like this. And they are such a stable star pair, like the entire Saptarshis are so stable that people thought this is ridiculous, going back to 140 years. For example, greatest astronomer of India, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, about 140 plus years ago, he said, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what to make of this, like of statement of Vyasa. Lokmanya Tilak, everyone would know that name. Lokmanya Tilak made use of a shlok like this to say how we can trust Rigveda, but how we cannot trust everything that is written in Mahabharata or Ramayana. Which is there is a what you can say, interpolations that has occurred, in the Ramayana Mahabharata. But Rigveda doesn't. Now he's not quite right on that. Interpolations has happened everywhere. The addition, subtractions has happened everywhere. But again, that's not the subject. Bharat Ratna P.V. Kane, he said this is impossible. This is referring to Arundhati Vashishtha. Impossible in the very order of nature. Astronomy speaks this is impossible. C.V. Vaidya, Bharatacharya, Lokmanya Tilak gave him the title Bharatacharya for his deep research of Mahabharata. He said some later author, like say Sauti, Romarshana Sauti, must have inserted something to make this dramatic. Okay, but even if Romarshana Sauti has inserted it, he inserted within 100 years of the Mahabharata. Okay, but it is there in all the text, all the manuscripts of Mahabharata. There is no confusion with the translation, and it has come to our times. How lucky! Again, to that one evidence itself, Aditya, we are taking too long, but anyways, it's worth. So now I fast forward to 15 years. I tried to test in different ways. For example, say one thing, like, I don't know, I didn't ask you your background, like your technical.
Yes, I'll be able to understand a little bit. Yes. I'll be able to understand.
Sorry?
I'll be able to understand. You can.
Yeah. And so, for example, like let's say the equilibrium, I said, okay, so somebody is ahead, somebody is behind. Right now we know that Vashishtha is walking ahead, Arundhati is behind. But those are such a stable star pair. So I said, okay, when is it possible that I can bring them together in this east-west direction? Okay, so then I can say they change who is ahead, who is behind. When I did that, that took me like another 3 years, like finding the proper motion data from the latest and greatest astronomy text. And when I did that, that took me to about 200,000 years in future. Meaning this Arundhati and Vashishtha, if I want to bring them together just like this in the east-west direction using their proper motion, it would happen only in the future. And it would take 1 to 2 lakhs years. So that is useless. That is not useful for my purposes. Why Vyasa would write it. You follow?
Yes.
Then the second one I said, well, why ahead or behind, we'll look at it different. But let me see in the north-south direction when they could be together. And again, using the proper motions, when I looked at it, they could be together about 20,000 years ago. Now, there was a big challenge with this. First thing, it is so damn slow that even when it comes together, now it still has to go on the other side, which will take another 20,000 years. So we are looking at 30,000, 40,000 years ago or so. That is not the only problem. The other problem is when exactly we will start saying that one is ahead of the other. Like, they are so close to begin with. Even right now, when we say they are like this, the difference between them is very, very small. Sometimes if the eyesight is not very good, you cannot even see Arundhati. So then now I said, oh, this is not the way. So there has to be something else. I am saying how the scientific method works. I would say none of these, maybe with the exception of likes of Lele Shastri or likes of Dr. P.V. Vartak, no other Mahabharata dating researcher, dead or alive, has bothered to study the astronomy evidence from the Mahabharata text scientifically in this fashion. Nobody. That is the problem. That's why they are getting these all chaotic dates. So fast forward to 2009, and finally what I find is it's not about changing their positions with respect to each other using proper motion, but let us find out what else is changing. And I'll make it short. So the answer is the precession of the Earth's axis. because of which the pole star or the pole point changes. And all these Arundhati Vashishtha, they are always going around the pole point. So if the location of pole point changes, which is, think of that as the center of the circle around which these guys are going in a circle, their relative orientation, their relative orientation changes in such a way that now you see Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha. And that happens only during a certain time interval. Just for simplicity, I will say from 10,000 BCE to 4500 BCE, or say 10,000 BCE to 5000 BCE. That is that middle, about a 5000 year interval, when anybody watching from the earth looking at Arundhati Vasishtha in the sky, they would have seen Arundhati walk ahead of Vasishtha.
So I think
So
you
now, yeah.
I think you are referring to the wobble of the Earth's axis, which takes around 25,000 years, which changes the position of the poles. That
is the 26,000 year cycle. Yeah, the wobble of the axis. Correct. So the Earth's axis kind of makes its own circle in the sky, you can say, like this. And that takes 26,000 years. Precession of the Earth's axis. As a phenomenon on the ground, we see there is a precession of the equinoxes. But equinoxes is the outcome. Precession of equinoxes is the outcome of the original phenomenon of the precession of the Earth's axis. Yeah.
and that is basically in tally with the cycle of the yugas also.
Let's not even go cycle of the yugas. Yuga is like another can of worms. I mean, I have no hesitation going there. But you asked me for few references from astronomy, and I'm still stuck on one. but just to give you an idea, this is such a revolutionary reference, and the science progresses by falsifying the previous theories. Okay, so this is what it is. Now, what is the beauty of it? So, what is the beauty of the outcome of Arundhati Vasishtha observation? That it says this is possible only between 10,000 BC to 5000 BC. And what is the beauty is in the context, because practically there are a couple of exceptions, and almost all of them are no longer alive. They are dead, like Dr. P.V. Vartak, Lele Shastri. I'm trying to think. There are a couple of guys. But other than one Mr. Modak and even S.B. Balakrishna Dikshit, who had proposed something in this time range, like between 5000 BC to 10,000 BC. But all the existing living Mahabharata dating researchers, if you look at them and their dates, they all fall outside this region. So none of them will able to explain Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishtha. This is called a decisive evidence, a clinching evidence. So like, hey, how are you going to explain that? But is that the only evidence? The answer is no. I will fast forward because I took so much time on this. Unfortunately or fortunately, Aditya, this is the nature of this evidence. And I did take this time because there is so much of a naivety, so much of a foolishness, unscientific, illogical blabber that has happened in this space of the dating of Mahabharata, this space of dating of Ramayana, and frankly, the space of dating of Rigveda. That's why I took this much time. But quickly, let me mention another one. The evidence, we can give a title for this, call it Bhishma Nirvana evidence. The references to that Bhishma Nirvana evidence they are spread across the 10 out of 18 parvas of Mahabharata. So it's not like you can remove one and run away with it. You cannot run away from this evidence. It starts with the Udyoga Parva to all Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Shalya Parva, Stri Parva, Sautik Parva, Shanti Parva, Anushasan Parva, Ashrama Vasik Parva, Ashwamedha Parva. You cannot run away from this evidence. What it is that how long Bhishma was on the bed of arrows, when was the time when actually Mahabharata war began, like the time in the way calendar. So it was the month of Margashirsha. And then Bhishma was waiting on the bed of arrows for the day of winter solstice. So what Mahabharata text tells you, 100 plus evidence, it tells you that Bhishma was on the bed of arrows for definitely more than 95 days. Mahabharata war definitely began at the end of Kartik month and beginning of Margashirsha, like a Kartik Amavasya. The next day is a Margashirsha Shukla Pratipada, and so on. Went through the Margashirsha Purnima and then couple more days and it was over. But Margashirsha, nobody disagrees on this, by the way. Okay? And that's not the point. If somebody disagrees, the guy is like a clueless, But I'm saying all these 30 plus Mahabharata dating researchers who are alive, while all of us may disagree on the year of Mahabharata war, nobody disagrees that the Mahabharata war took place during month of Margashirsha. And from that, the Bhishma, who fell down on the 10th day of the battle, is on the bed of arrows until the day of winter solstice, and that duration is minimum of 95 days that Mahabharata is saying. If you combine this astronomically, the outcome Aditya that you get is even more profound, more powerful. That Bhishma Nirvana, just like Arundhuti Vashishtha is giving a 5,000, 6,000 year time interval, this particular evidence of Bhishma Nirvana gives a sharp time interval of about 1500 years, from like 6700 BCE to 5100 BCE, that the Mahabharata war can only occur during this time. So on astronomy, there are 200 additional evidence to go, so I will not go there, other than mentioning, if you just take, say, 8 descriptions of Mars that are given in the Mahabharata text, only 8 descriptions of Mars that are there, meaning forget other planets, forget Arundhuti Vashishtha, forget Bhishma Nirvana, and you try to match all those descriptions of Mars for any time between now and say last 20,000 years, 40,000, whatever, how far back you want to go, there is only one year for which you will able to match them, and that year is 5561 BCE. So this is how powerful, how scientific, how empirically testable. There is a reproducibility with this evidence, there is a repeatability with this evidence, there is a calibration, there is a linearity, stability. If you are familiar with the gauge R&R, like a measurement systems, take any aspect, this particular evidence goes with the flying colors. And this evidence that I just told you, the Arundhuti Vashishtha, but also Bhishma Nirvana, decisively falsifies anyone claiming the year of Mahabharata war, not just Jijit Nadumuri Ravi, anyone claiming the year of Mahabharata war any time after 5000 BCE. 5000 BCE. So that is to say, nobody can dare assert a year of Mahabharata war in the last 7000 years. Now you will say, well, Nilesh, there are actually 30 people. Yeah, there are. Anybody can say anything, but if they have to look at, in a scientific way, look at the internal evidence of Mahabharata, it will not last. It will be falsified. And I want them to come forward and do that.
Right.
So quickly I will mention Saraswati. Okay. So Ramayana we will skip. Very similar story for Ramayana, by the way. Different evidence. Yeah. But Saraswati is just quickly telling you the river morphology. Like we have like Padma Shri Wakankar did a deep study, great study of river Saraswati into late 50s, 60s, 70s, somewhere there. And there are many other, like one Mr. Ghosh, he has written an amazing paper, I think in 79 or so, 1980, amazing paper. And much of the research, like the 200 papers that I'm referring to, they are based on these studies, but actually going down, digging the core, and then they're studying the river morphology, hydrology, and that. The summary is this, that Saraswati, in a very deep antiquity, was very likely possibly flowing near Jaipur, Ajmer, and that area. Then because of geological shift, it shifted further north to around Bikaner. Near Bikaner, it was flowing from 172,000 BC to about 70,000 BC. Okay. Then again another shift, geological shift occurred, that Saraswati got shifted further north to like a Kalibanga, Suratgarh, Hanumangarh area, like a bordering Punjab and Rajasthan in today's terms. And there it was flowing until it became extinct about 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago. So that's the brief history of Saraswati. Sometime between 50,000 and 40,000 years, Yamuna separated from Saraswati and started meeting Ganga, and therefore Saraswati's flow went down, but not substantially, because some small tributaries like Drishadvati and all, they were still continuing to flow and meeting Saraswati. But something drastically happened 15,000 years ago, Again, all I'm telling you, I'm not just giving the papers names to make this bigger, but people can listen to my other talks, listen to my articles, papers, read books. The Saraswati, sorry, the Satluj, which was coming straight south and meeting Saraswati, near Rupanagar, it turned sharp west and started flowing westward, and this happened 15,000 years ago. And therefore, now the significant water of Satluj was also no longer available to Saraswati. So Saraswati was left with a few rivers flowing from the Kurukshetra area. And over time, many other geological changes, climatological changes, it went down, and Saraswati disappeared sometime, say 5000 BCE, and very fast afterwards. That is the story of Saraswati.
Right. Your way of describing the river also uncannily matches with the person whom I consider my guru, Sadguru. In a recent statement of his, he is saying that river, do not consider river as a river. River is a consequence of multiple tributaries. If the tributaries dry up, then consequently the river will... He was talking about in the context of the current situation of the rivers that India is going through, like Kaveri and Ganga, and they are in a threat of getting dried up. So it uncannily matches with his description also, that as a consequence of the tributaries also not meeting anymore and the paths changing and Yamuna also separating, Saraswati dried up. So it matches that description also uncannily. Obviously it happens over a period of hundreds or thousands of years. So we are just taking snapshots here.
Want to see the full podcast? The link is given in the description and on the screen. Hope you enjoyed this video. If this video added value to you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with a friend who may find this helpful. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.